We have a whole pile of teams on the brink to talk about on Tuesday's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And my goodness me, there are a lot of teams in a whole lot of trouble. And we're looking at you, Toronto Maple Leafs. We're looking at you, New York Islanders. We'll talk all about it on today's episode.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the new music and you know what time it is. It's time for your daily source for hockey breakdowns and everything that you need to know from around the world of the NHL. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, hosted as always by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele wrote in, and on this side of the microphone, it's your boy Big Flip Livingstone. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. We wouldn't be here without our subscribers, listeners, followers. So make sure you smash that subscribe button and drop us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your content. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We admit it, we have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on a classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go right now for free on the App Store or Google Play. Steele, there's no playing around on today's episode because I just want to say this right off the top. You and I talk a lot off air, but I haven't shared this take with you. This first round of the NHL playoffs, to me, has been very underwhelming. And I'm not just saying that from a Toronto Maple Leafs perspective. And I know there's been a couple of overtime games, but if all of these teams lose tonight, Steele, that are on the brink, this is like a cakewalk of a first round. We have the New York Rangers rolling through. There's just not a lot of competition to be had because right now, aside from, if Dallas wins tonight and pushes that game to even, a lot of these series have been tipped in one way. So we'll talk about the Isles on the brink. The Preds and Canucks. The Preds should have this series in a whole different standing, Steele, but they do not. We'll talk about that. Connor Hellebuyck. Oh my goodness, he is in trouble, and so are the Jets, and the Leafs are circling the drain once again, Steele, is what I have there. We'll save a lot of time at the end of the episode for that. We're not even getting into bets today because there are a lot of topics that need to be touched on. Over to you for just that. Isles and Canes. I think there's a clear-cut angle here to be discussed in the goaltending for the New York Islanders. But either way you slice it, they get a double overtime win and prolong their short game work another couple of days.
Yeah, I'll start off with, just saying what you started off with. I don't want to say the first round's been underwhelming because I've really enjoyed all of the series so far, but sure. I do agree with you that it's been lopsided. You look at every single series so far and it's 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, 4-1, and if 4-0, and if Vegas wins tonight, again, we're recording early, then it's 3-1 in that series as well. So, I thought there would be a lot more, even series, 2-2, just again, we're only game 4, game 5 into it right now. But yeah, I do agree with that. I still think round one's been very competitive, but it hasn't been the turnout that we've been hoping for with a lot of those going to, 6 or 7 games. And right now the Rangers are the only team to move on so far. We're sweeping the Washington Capitals. We don't really have to touch on them until the second round series with whoever they face with one of these teams in the Carolina Hurricanes and New York Islanders. And the Islanders get a huge, huge win in double overtime from the most unlikely of heroes in Robert Bortuzzo. So, I mean, that guy gets on the board. He gets the game winner. He keeps their season alive. You could see the passion. You could see the emotion when that goal goes in. And I obviously I was very happy about that because I have the Islanders in 7, and I think the reverse sweep is coming in place right now. We're seeing the start of it. I still think this can go the distance, but I wouldn't be surprised as well if Carolina wins the next one tomorrow night.
I don't see it for you. However, I appreciate and respect
a lot of people don't see it
to this take. And I guess I'm just, I've been very critical of Patrick Waugh myself. And I understand Varlamov was a main reason why they found themselves in that third spot. And down the stretch, clearly Sorokin wasn't the guy. But the way in which he's gone about trying to go back to him, and I know Sorokin also in that start let in a couple of softies, but the leash was so short. You and I touched on it. So I just, and hit me with your take on this before we move on, because I really do think there's a lot more to be said about Preds, Canucks, Jets, Avs, and of course, Leafs, Bruins. So let me just leave it at this. even if you get another win against Carolina, is Semyon Varlamov the guy to take you on a cup run? To me, the answer is no. And I know that Sorokin hasn't played as well as him, and maybe I'm grasping at straws a little bit here. I just don't like the move, because if you do get hot, if you do win a couple of games, for me, it has to be Sorokin, because if you want this to be more than just a flash in the pan, you're not taking down the New York Rangers or any teams out west with Semyon Varlamov. No offense. He is a very good, maybe one of the best backup goalies we've seen in a long time, Steele, but there's a reason he's always been the backup. He can't take the load. He can't be the number one guy. They just paid Sorokin the big number one money. So for me, I was just a little bit questioning Patrick Waugh's deployment. Is that the only reason, though, that this team finds themselves down 3-1? Of course not. Hit me with your take very quickly on that, and let's move on to Preds Canucks.
I question Patrick Waugh from game one with starting Semyon Varlamov. I haven't questioned it moving forward because of when Ilya Sorokin did come in. He allowed 3 goals on 14 shots, and he gets pulled. I really like the tandem of Sorokin and Varlamov, and I do think he can be a goaltender to take them the distance if they had a better team in front of him.
Fair.
They continue to struggle scoring goals. They continue to struggle on the special teams. And again, this is another series where it could have possibly been tied 2-2 if they hold on to that 3-0 win in game 2.
That's a fact.
They struggled to really help Varlamov in front of him. They've struggled on penalty kill. Carolina's power play has been unbelievable so far this series as well, throughout the regular season. So I put zero blame on Varlamov. He's played some spectacular hockey. He's kept them in this series as well. And again, besides the question mark in game 1 of starting with Varlamov, I've liked riding him over the last 4 games, up until this point. Again, I put a lot of the blame on the penalties, first of all, from the New York Islanders side of things, but also just the lack of being able to get shots on net, and continue to capitalize on those opportunities.
Yeah. Depth scoring as well, always clearly been an issue. We've been talking about it for 3 seasons with this team. Food for thought. Varlamov allowed 8 goals over the first 2 games. Just throwing that out there, just for devil's advocate's sake, Steele. But before we get to the break, we're going to talk about the Preds and Canucks. And after the break, we'll talk about Avs, Jets, Leafs, Bruins. Of course, no bets for tonight because we got to save all our bullets for the target board of these teams on the brink, Steele. And I think of the 4, I would say that the Nashville Predators are the most unlucky to be in this situation, because the rest of the teams kind of made their own bed and they have to lie in it, where the Nashville Predators, I'm not going to say they got unlucky, because this game is played for 60 minutes or more for a reason, Steele, and the Nashville Predators played a dominant 57, and then they let the Vancouver Canucks off the hook in the final 3 minutes and change. I don't know if you saw Farhan Lalji's tweet. The main guy, number 1 reporter who covers the Canucks, said, it looks like this Canucks team has already packed their bags and headed home halfway through the 3rd period. Hit me with your take first and foremost very quickly on the Canucks, the goaltending, maybe, wherever you want to start. Then let's talk about it a little bit more after the break.
This is the one series where I'm very surprised it's not at least tied 2-2, or at least not in Nashville's favor 3-1 right now. Especially with losing Thatcher Demko, then losing Casey DeSmith, and now going to their 3rd-string goaltender. I don't even like
Arturs Shilovs.
I don't like calling him a 3rd-string goaltender because he's been pretty solid, when he's been in there for the Vancouver Canucks. But
he won a bronze with Latvia last year at the World Juniors.
So with that being said, unlucky with, Nashville's been very fortunate with that being in their favor of losing some of their top goaltenders. And then being, as well as, I was looking at the stats. This is very surprising to me on top of it. During the regular season, the Vancouver Canucks averaged 28.39 shots per game.
Yeah.
They are currently averaging 17 per game in 4 games in the postseason so far. That is a tremendous, tremendous decline of shots on net per game. And they're very fortunate to be up 3-1. And like you said, to your point, they looked lost. They looked out to lunch in game 4 until the last 3 minutes in the first minute of overtime, where they were able to score 3 goals in that time. And just before I throw it back over to you, this would have been a completely different series if Colton Sissons didn't hit the post on that empty net. If he buries that, it becomes a 4-1 game. They win this, tie it up the series. They go back to Vancouver for game 5, and it's completely, it's a best of 3 at that point. So very unfortunate for Sissons. They hit the post there. They celebrated a little too early on the bench. And then next thing you know, they score 2 to tie it up. And Brock Besser, wow. Brock Besser and JT Miller are right now the 2 best players for the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, that line was the best line on the ice in game 4. Pius Suter, I believe, up there on the left wing with those 2. Clearly, Brock Besser resurrecting that team from the grave in that game. We'll talk a little bit more about it right after we holler at our friends from Monopoly Go. We'll also talk about Hellebuyck, the Jets, Leafs, Bruins, and these Colorado Avalanche, who on the back of Cale Makar are cooking once again. As I alluded to, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go. All right, we got to pause right here and talk about it. You know what we're saying. Flag on the play. We talked about that, but there's so much more good stuff in Monopoly Go. You can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every single day with constantly changing tourneys and challenges, a ton, including their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine steal. This sounds all kinds of weird, but I'm here for it. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So go and get off the bench. Download it now for free at Google Play or the App Store. Game on.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you go check out Locked On NFL. The mock draft is now available. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college football experts and even the fantasy football angle. Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Once again, hit the subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Flip and I appreciate all that love and support you show our podcast Monday through Friday. 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find it out there. Just again, continuing before we get over to the Winnipeg Jets and Colorado Avalanche, just wrapping up this Vancouver Canucks Nashville Predators series. Please. I believe I know I had the Nashville Predators in 7. You had them in 7 as well, or did you have the Canucks winning the series? I can't remember.
Pretty sure we were aligned on this one.
I think we both had Preds in 7. Again, so this is the one series where I'm very surprised it's not at least tied up at 2 apiece, especially with the lack of shots. I mean, like the Vancouver Canucks won a game with 12 shots on net. That was very surprising to me as well. And
they had 12 shots from the second period all the way through to overtime.
Yeah,
still. Also paging Elias Pettersson. The playoffs started. I don't know where he's at, Steele. So I think this Vancouver team, if you take away Brock Besser and JT Miller, also shout out to the goaltenders though, because I don't think I've ever heard before a team being in the first round, Steele, and having a win from 3 different goaltenders, and the series isn't even over yet. So I think that actually needs to be spoken about a little bit as well, because they haven't been great, but they have been good enough for the team to respond in front of them. I just think the Vancouver Canucks are very lucky to be at this position, headed home to ice this series. I don't think the Preds are done just yet, though.
I don't think they're done just yet. A lot of respect over to the goaltending because they've been standing on their head. One goaltender who has been the opposite of standing on the head.
Nice segue.
Connor Hellebuyck has had a very difficult last 2 seasons in the playoffs, especially this year. We knew it was going to be a challenge against, again, a star-studded Avalanche team. Before we actually dive into it, I just got to say, I got to toot my own horn here. Cale Makar is leading the Colorado Avalanche in points. I said that at plus 850. It was a great bet. It was my best bet. 8 points so far. Valeri Nichushkin, 6 points, 6 goals. He had a hat trick the other game as well, but Arturi Lehkonen, we talked about it. Nichushkin, Lehkonen, McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar.
Too much.
And Jared Bednar has been speaking so highly about the 2-way game of Arturi Lehkonen, the 200-foot game. He's doing it defensively. He's doing it offensively. He goes back and forth. He's so good for them. He's so underrated. X factor, indeed. You had it. You had it. But yeah, to me, we're going to talk about the Maple Leafs soon. The Winnipeg Jets are the Maple Leafs of the Western Conference. Whoa. I've said this before, they play great in the regular season. Come playoffs, they cannot score goals. They allow a ton of goals on them. I mean, the Leafs haven't allowed a ton of goals in some of these games, but I mean, this is also the Colorado Avalanche we're talking about. There's too many stars on that team to not get scored on.
Correct. Well, let me just leave it at this. Number one, I'll leave it at this. Start at this. How about that, Steele? The Winnipeg Jets, I said this a couple of weeks ago, they play a very specific style of game. They have to be responsible with the puck, not like other teams don't, but they're not good enough. They're not overly talented in one area, aside from maybe in the crease, and that's what's letting them down, to really, like outpunch the opponent. The blue line's good. It's not great. Forward group, pretty balanced. There's not one real superstar up there. Say what you will about Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele. Ain't no superstars. So they really need to play their style, their Ricky Bonuses type of game. And right now, 0 for 4 on the power play while taking 4 bad penalties against this team. You're playing right into how the Colorado Avalanche, number one, want to play, and number two, win cups playing this way, Steele. They are far too much for the Winnipeg Jets to handle offensively when Valeri Nichushkin and Arturi Lehkonen are rolling like that, because we already know about the big three. Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, and Nathan MacKinnon. Those three right there are usually too much for most teams to handle anyway. So when you have Cale Makar going end-to-end like Bobby Orr, and you got Valeri Nichushkin and Lehkonen out here adding that wrinkle, this Winnipeg Jets team is cooked if they have Connor Hellebuyck playing the way he is. And that's where I want to go next. And let me just get to it very quickly because I got the stats up ready to go. 19 goals against in the first 4 games here, Steele, and an .870 save percentage. That is not only not good enough, that is so not Connor Hellebuyck that this Winnipeg Jets team looks as rattled as he does.
And I don't know if you have the stats up there as well, but how many shots has Connor Hellebuyck faced as well? Because
146.
Yeah, I mean, that is way too many shots for Connor Hellebuyck to be seeing in a 4-game span.
So many.
That's what? Oh, that's over 45 per game. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's over. That's a lot, or maybe not over 45, but 40.
It's close.
40. It's close to 45.
Yeah, let's call it an average of 40. It's far too many. However,
way too many shots. The penalty kill, or the clueless and unnecessary penalties that the Winnipeg Jets are just it's right into their palm. It's feeding right into the Avalanche's plan right now.
Yeah,
and exactly. They don't know what to do on the penalty kill because again, they have too many stars on the team. Cale Makar, MacKinnon, it doesn't matter who gets it done. But Nichushkin in front of the net, Arturi Lehkonen in front of the net, they're getting it done. And this is why sometimes you can't read too much into the regular season series because the regular season series was 3-0 Winnipeg and they outscored them 17-4.
And they beat him 7-0 in the final game of the year, or 7-1 or whatever.
So you can't sometimes, specifically when you look at teams like the Colorado Avalanche, a recent Stanley Cup winning championship, you can't read into the regular season series too much when you do with some of the other teams, like, with the Boston Bruins. We're going to talk about them very, very soon. They had the regular season series with them over the Maple Leafs. Again, so got to throw that out there. We're going to talk about the Boston Bruins, Toronto Maple Leafs series right now after the break. We're going to get there. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, money lines, puck lines, whatever you want, all on the app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. Let us know in the comments down below how your NHL bracket has done so far. Has it been busted? Just like some of ours are going up right now in flames. My Eastern Conference bracket so far is just absolutely brutal. My West is actually pretty good, but the Eastern Conference, besides the New York Rangers sweep, which I did predict, other than that, it's gone to absolute chaos. Tore it up pretty much right after game 2. But it is what it is, with one of those teams being the Toronto Maple Leafs and Boston Bruins series.
First of all, shout out to the New York Rangers for doing exactly what you predicted and what we all thought they should do, and absolutely steamroll right through the Washington Capitals. Alex Ovechkin registered 1 hit in Game 4 with his team on
0
the brink.
points.
0, 0, 0, 0. 0 shots on net in Game 4. 0 points in the series. I think that's a clear indication, Steele, of where his career is headed and where this Washington Capitals team is headed. They had their ride. We're not going to get there because also, Steele, Elliot Friedman, Monday afternoon, I don't know if you saw that one. This core four, this group in Toronto, unless they mount a comeback, they're done, according to Elliot Friedman. And this is what you and I have been kind of tiptoeing around a little bit, getting at it a little bit. Who do they trade? Do they trade? Are they patient? I think you and I have been pretty clear that they've kind of deserved a couple of kicks at the can. Some young players. I'm done with that, Steele.
Yeah.
I'm done with it now. Nice time is over. This fan base has been far too patient, far too, I don't even know, run through the mud and disrespected now. Because let me just go off for a second. This William Nylander situation, number one, has been a joke. The way that they threw him out there in front of the media for him to go ahead and say nothing, and this is a personal matter, not when you're the core four, not when you're in Toronto in Original Six and you're making the money you are. I'm sorry, that's not good enough. The fan base deserves to know what's going on. I get it. It's the playoffs. I get that you don't go out there and reveal everything. That, number one, is a joke. I'll let you get to Mitch Marner because I think you have a take there. However, this team is the way that they came out in Game 4, Steele, and that's just where I want to focus, and I'll hand it over to you, I promise, because I know we're going to go back and forth here for a couple of minutes. The first two periods from that team on home ice after Bob Cole was recognized, and you know the severity of the situation. You got Sidney Crosby posting tributes to Bobby Cole on his own social media. I don't care if you're a young player like in Mitch and Matthews. You knew how big it was, even with Bob Cole, that, like, put the Bob Cole thing aside. You're at home. You got the Bruins in your own barn. I know Matthews is sick, Steele, but to come out and put up that performance and the performance that they've put up on special teams, 1 for 14, they should be embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to be sitting in front of this kind of thing behind me with these logos and what you and I have poured into this team. They're cooked. Matthews is looking like he is out tonight. Stick a fork in it, coach. It's done.
Look, there's a lot you and I could both say about this, and we could go on for a long time. And that's why I'm thinking once this series is over, depending on which way it goes, when this series is over, again, depending on which way it goes, we're going to have to dedicate a full episode talking about what needs to change, what needs to happen moving forward with this team. What I'm thinking that we should do is we should do a top 5 of what needs to change and list our top 5s for what needs to change.
Do that with all the disappointing team, Steele. Maybe we do that to fill in some offseason content.
We're gonna have to do it right after this series is over. We're gonna dedicate a full episode to the Toronto Maple Leafs because you and I have a lot to talk about. You and I have a lot on our mind, and we have a lot that we could do for a full episode.
Start where you would like, because like you said, there is a lot to pick apart. I think I alluded to some of the big ones, but take it where you'd like to take it, my friend. Anywhere you like.
I don't want to delve too deep into specific players because I've done that a lot over the last couple of days. I want to speak more on the series and what I saw when I was there at Game 4 in Scotiabank Arena. It makes sense now why the crowd is so dead. It just makes sense now being there. Watching it from home, you don't understand. Obviously your team's disappointing, but when you're in the crowd, I mean, the crowd was really into it for the first period, and even going into the second period, halfway through, we were depleted going into the third period. There was no effort. There was no accountability. There was nothing. And even after the Mitch Marner goal, we couldn't even be excited because there was still nothing to cheer for because, it was a great goal. It was a talented, skilled goal, but there was nothing that we saw moving forward for the next 14 minutes that said, okay, we're going to come back, tie this up, and potentially win this game. Even after it, I could barely celebrate. So that's number one. I now understand why the crowd and the fan base.
I don't like it, but it's a good one.
Yeah, I now understand why it's so dead in there sometimes at home in the barn. And you could, obviously there's still the business guys, there's the people in the suits that fill up the arena, but
the corporate.
There was really nothing to cheer about. So that's number one. Number two, again, we're going to dive into this later on a full episode about what needs to change, but this entire series, like you said, 1 for 14 on the power play. Absolutely brutal.
Joke.
And I don't understand, first of all, I don't understand the coaching decision to, obviously you get Nylander back, but you take out Connor Dewar, who that fourth line was playing great. It was probably one of the best lines, honestly, in game 3 and game 2.
Maybe the best.
Probably, the best. So I didn't like the coaching decision with that, bringing him out. You take out somebody else. I mean, could have been anybody else besides that, but because the fourth line was great. The thing I want to talk about is I cannot believe that Brad Marchand does not have a single penalty in this entire series.
Ooh.
Not one penalty from Brad Marchand this entire series. And I want to give him credit because he's been absolutely phenomenal.
He deserves some credit.
He deserves so much because he's doing it all for them. My key thing that I said when we were doing our preseason playoff pre-playoff series episodes, my X factor and my thing moving forward for the Maple Leafs was you have to stop David Pastrnak. Honestly, David Pastrnak's been pretty invisible out there. The odd time he does a little bit, he's got a couple of assists, lays the body out there. Besides that, they've stopped him. He's not the David Pastrnak that we've seen in the regular season. Brad Marchand has taken over this Boston Bruins club. He's he's living rent-free in the Maple Leafs heads right now. But I don't want to blame the officiating because, it is what it is. But the fact that he does not have one single penalty when I can probably, bring up the tapes and I could probably count at least 4, maybe 6. I mean, to me, that's a little brutal. Actually, it's a lot brutal. I don't even know what the word is. I am flabbergasted. I'm bamboozled that this guy who takes out Bertuzzi's legs 3 times in 3 different games doesn't have a single penalty.
Okay. 100%. Especially, what was it, game 3, where he was really going back and forth with Bertuzzi the whole time.
3.
However, you can't, as the Toronto Maple Leafs, play into what you knew coming into this series was going to be a main theme.
Oh, yeah,
not even
100%.
getting your point about the penalties. For sure. Not like this is not me trying to nitpick at that. This is just me bringing up another point for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And maybe that's a coaching thing as well, Steele. You did not have your players prepared to deal with what Brad Marchand was going to bring to the table. Especially, I think Tyler Bertuzzi has fooled us, Steele, over the last couple of years. He is not nearly as good as the numbers that he has put up over the last couple of years. He has been up there for me as a major disappointment. The guy's making $5.5 million. 18 or whatever goals he got, and him skating around looking like he really doesn't want to be there right now is upsetting. And let me just hit you with what I wrote today about Brad Marchand. It's a short one. Death, taxes, and Brad Marchand absolutely dominating the Maple Leafs. Preseason, regular season, postseason, you name it. The little ball of hate has Toronto's number and then some. He is one of the best clutch performers of this generation, and he just passed Cam Neely with 56 postseason goals and 13 postseason game-winning goals, respectively. Toronto has no response for Brad Marchand. He's been a difference maker, and he is one of the main reasons why the Leafs, once again, are looking for answers. Number 1, that sounded good, but number 2, he's cooking them big time.
He is cooking them. He leads the series. He leads the Boston Bruins with 8 points. I believe he has 5 goals, so he is absolutely cooking them right now. And if there is any light at the end of the tunnel before we wrap this up, I will just finish off by saying this.
Please.
If you go back to the 2018 series between the Bruins and Leafs, they were down 3-1. They won games 5. They won game 6. They forced game 7. They pushed it to game 7, and then go back to last year.
Yeah.
Boston Bruins were up 3-1 against the Florida Panthers, and they choked.
So you're saying there's a chance. Hey,
that's all. I'm throwing it out there. Go back to 2018. You go back to last year. They were up 3-1. Hey, drink. Yeah. I've got the Kool-Aid going right now. But okay, that is a fact. That is something to. If you want some hope, you want some faith. That from last year. Look at the 2018 series. Maybe they can change destiny. Maybe they can change history and somehow force game 7 and win on the road in Boston. We're hoping as Leaf fans that they pull something off, but it's going to be tough if Austin Matthews isn't in there. It's going to be tough with the way Mitch Marner's playing, and it's going to be tough if William Nylander is still dealing with migraines right now. So all of that being said, we're still hoping, we're still praying that we can see a little bit more Leafs action, and hopefully they can pull out a big win against the Boston Bruins in the first round. With that being said, thank you so much for making the Locked On fantasy hockey podcast, your first listen every single day. Once again, go check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. You can also find it on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. Make sure you go check it out, subscribe, and check it out on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day out there. Good luck with your bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.